Hey everyone, and welcome to my Procreate demo for the piece I call the new Keyblade Master. So here you can see the whole Kingdom Hearts gang plus my son Jack. We've been playing Kingdom Hearts and he's a huge fan, and I sort of wanted to just do this as a fun piece for him, and then it sort of got out of control and I ended up really trying to match style and all that kind of stuff. So it originally was just going to be a sketch, and then it became much more. So this video mostly is going to cover sort of trying to match style, not entirely, but a little bit, and trying to look at the hallmarks of a style and bring it into what you're doing, especially not so much around everything being style, but also just design thoughts. Let's talk about the methods that I'm sort of using in here. I didn't 100% match the look and feel of Kingdom Hearts. If I were working harder at it and it wasn't just sort of a goof to begin with, I probably would have worked a little bit harder at it, but I think that the end result is still pretty effective. So here I took a shot of Sora from Kingdom Hearts 2, which was the game that my son and I were just starting at the time. He really loved 1, and we're going through the whole series now that the HD version is out, and so I wanted to go with Sora from Kingdom Hearts 2 because that was the one he was about to see a lot of. So I wanted to sort of get a version of it where Jack was just another Keyblade wielder that was sort of dressed like the way Mickey is and Sora is. So by getting this version of Sora and putting him here as a visual reference, it allows me to really try to mimic it, but make sure that I'm also giving Jack like a unique outfit at the same time. So that's sort of what the inspiration was behind this entire thing. So you can see on the right, I've got this rough of sort of a body type that might sort of look like my kid, albeit a little bit older, just because to truly do like a 4-year-old standing next to Sora, he would look quite small. So I aged him up a little, and I also sized him down later. This was slightly larger because I knew that's what I wanted to work with. So you can see I get this body type that's like finding what Jack's body type would be like in the Kingdom Hearts universe. So like bigger feet and some bigger hands, bigger head, things like that. And now what I'm doing is I'm just trying to mimic some of the things that Sora has going on, but in terms of the mentality around the costume design, but try to bring some fresh stuff. So I gave him like this one sort of off-kilter satchel bag, and I'm still giving him shorts like Sora and gloves like Sora and boots like Sora because that's pretty common in the Kingdom Hearts universe. But then I wanted to make sure that like all of those smaller details were a little bit more his own. So he's going to be borrowing a little bit of Sora's older costume also in terms of like the color scheme, but trying to mix it up so that like he won't have dark gloves like Sora and he won't have the exact same shoe pattern as Sora. So that's sort of what the thought process is when I'm going through all of this. I also tried to do some stuff with the eyes and the mouth, and I was trying to really find it. And like I said, originally at this stage, this is still, the idea here was to just do like a rough and just sort of see where it goes. I used the fat pencil in this, which is linked down in the description below. I ended up using that for all the lines. If I wanted to go even cleaner, sort of like the final key art from Kingdom Hearts is, I probably would have used something different, but in the long run it really doesn't matter. So something to note here, if you look over at the Sora art while I'm doing the lines here on the right, you can see it's got that sort of halftone print look to it. If you actually look at, like, for instance, on his arm or his leg, some of the lighter areas, it's easier to see because that was just sort of the ref I got. So later that'll come back into play because I'm going to end up deciding to put all these guys in the same scene, and I need to make them all work together to some degree. So now on the right you can see I'm borrowing certain small design elements from Tetsuya Nomura's style that he's implementing into the costume design of Sora. So like that little sort of tab that comes down on Sora's arm, on his armor, on that shoulder piece, I'm instead moving that to the inside, attaching a strap to that, and having that strap go through the jacket like it's this sort of harness situation. And then I've got, you know, that big pocket there, which is, it's a pouch pocket. It's a little bit different than what Sora has, but then I'm using some of the trim that he's got on his coat to sort of influence the way I'm going to do the trim on the pocket. The little crowns that you see every now and then in Sora's design, whether it's on his chain that he had in the first game or it's on his sort of like clasp, his neck chain that he's got in the second game, I did that sort of as these like little snaps on the pocket. So I'm trying to find all of these things that are common themes throughout the Kingdom Hearts look and feel, and I'm trying to make sure that I apply that to this Jack's costume, basically. So here you can also see on the glove, I borrowed the X look from Sora's glove, but then I changed it up a little bit. It's got a little bit of a Ryu from Street Fighter glove to it, a little bit of Sora's glove from the first game, some qualities of that. So really what I'm trying to do is just hover around the same feel. The hope is that Jack could be running alongside Sora, and even though he would be a completely different character, it would look like they shopped at the same store, basically. The other thing too is you'll notice that the rough was pretty rough, and it lacked a lot of these details. Tetsuya Nomura's designs in general are heavy on detail. They're also heavy on I guess like the little ribbing that you put in on things, having trims on everything, having like layers and straps. Like these are things that he employs quite often. And so in the original rough, it was just to get sort of the basics, but then once I'm actually in here noodling everything in, it's like adding rivets and adding buckles and adding all these little, like the ribbing that's on his chest that goes from like where the hood is on the hoodie through the pocket underneath. Those are the types of things that are indicative of the look and feel of Kingdom Hearts and Nomura's style in general, and so I wanted to make sure that I was getting some of that. Then there are other spots where I'm being very literal with how it looks like Sora's, like for instance the way the shorts are handled. I wanted to just sort of straight up do that. I mean, really in 2017 it's a pretty dated look because it's these really baggy shorts, and when the game first came out that was like trendy. So if I were, you know, redesigning it for now, and I'm sure if Tetsuya Nomura was redesigning it for now, he'd probably change certain things. So there are things like that that like I didn't feel comfortable changing without completely breaking down the original inspiration. So I wanted to make sure that I just, some of those things I copied sort of as closely as possible. But like I said, at this point in the drawing, I'm starting to think to myself, shit, I think I'm going to make this a bigger drawing. I think I'm going to make it a little bit more worked than it originally was. So you can see that there are times where I'm sort of defaulting to my own style while also trying to mimic a little bit of the Kingdom Hearts style. So it's not perfect. It was never really meant to be perfect, but if I were going for something that was tighter to the style, like I said, I wouldn't be using the fat pencil for the final lines, and I would be a little bit more conscious of some of my line weights and the way that I'm treating some of the anatomy choices. But for the most part, I think that the average person would look at it, the final product, and they would say, oh yeah, that matches. So you can even see in like the way that I'm doing like the drop shadow off of his sleeve onto his arm, and then that's black. That's actually done with the line instead of the color. That's some of the stuff that I'm sort of starting to key off of the original art, the original key art of Sora. So now here I'm doing Jack's head. You can see I did that sort of outline, and then I realized his whole head was just way too wide, so I sort of brought that line in, and now I'm starting to get like a little bit better of a feel. I always sort of wanted Jack to have like a big grin, because Sora has a big grin from time to time, so I know that that's like within the look and feel of the game, and that's more Jack's personality than the face that I had on it before, so that's what I'm going for. But then you can see that there are certain things here that I'm bringing into it that are my style, doing more of like that straight line for the lower lid because he's smiling, and then you can see there I sort of, fuck, maybe I should mimic a little bit more of the Nomura style for that. But then you can see I've got other things that I'm really trying to stick to, like doing that interior line that sort of goes around the pupil in the iris. Here's where I'm taking like a total hardcore shortcut, and I really wanted to highlight this for a second here. So I found an actual model online of the Keyblade, and I was going to sort of have the whole thing be drawn flat anyways, which is similar to the way that it's drawn in a lot of the key art. And I just figured, because again, this was all just supposed to be a fun thing for my kid, I'm like, fuck it, I'll just do this real quick. So I'm basically going in and just tracing this model that's been positioned in the illustration the way that I'm going to use it. You can see me sort of, you know, I fill in some blanks here or there, but otherwise it's mostly just tracing this model. This was a shortcut that I took that I'm sure Nomura has traced a Keyblade or two, and maybe not, but I would be surprised if he hasn't. And so for me it was just a shortcut to get this done in time, because I wanted to get it done really quickly in order to show my kid. This was more or less done in one sitting. There were a couple of tweaks that I did after the fact, so I just wanted to make sure that, you know, the night that I got the idea to do this, that I could sort of get the whole thing done. So now we're moving into the shoes. Shoes are a big deal in Kingdom Hearts. If you look at everybody's shoes, they've got these elaborate tennis shoes on. Most everybody does. And so I really wanted to do something that felt like Sora's shoes, but had its own vibe to it. So it's got the same sole as Sora's shoes, but then a lot of the details on top are different. You can see that I'm speaking to certain key design elements of Sora's shoes, like having a metal plate on the front and having some sort of straps that go around like the ankle and the top of the foot. But then a lot of other things are fresh, but are trying to be within the same spirit of the actual game itself. So that's sort of my thought process behind these shoes. Because the shoes are sort of, I mean, they take up like 20% of the character since their feet are so big. So I wanted to make sure that I got those right. Or at least like they feel right. Again, the whole point is basically just to try and say, like, if Jack as a character went running by in the background of this game, would it feel like it fit? And I think for the most part that was achieved. So here we go. Now I'm positioning it just to see how he'll work next to Sora. So I've just got like this flat and this gradient, and then now this is me popping back over and doing like a true flat that's cleaner, and starting the actual coloring process. So I know, looking at Nomura's thing over here, there's a number of ways that you could go about coloring this, but I decided to go with a method where it was going to be flatted, and then I was going to use a soft airbrush and a combination of either like some multiply layers or some just straight color picked layers in order to pull this off. I wanted Jack's skin tone to be a lighter color because he's a little bit of a pale kid, and comparatively to Sora, because Sora's actually fairly tan. So that was a area where I wanted to use like a multiply, which is what you got going on there. But then when I get to like his pants and his jacket and the white from his jacket and the red from Sora's design, like those are some pretty specific colors that need to feel like they're existing they're all the same material and that they're all in the same lighting, etc., etc. So that's why those actually are just straight color picked colors from the Sora piece. I may have tweaked them every now and then, because if I go to color pick and I get like a weird spot in the halftone, I could end up picking up like a weird color, and I adjust that later. But that's the goal. So you can see there I changed the colors of the gloves from yellow to red. I thought the yellow was just a little too washed out, and depending on what I was going to make the Keyblade, I thought that would be too similar to the Keyblade. So now they're a little too similar to reused gloves, but who gives a shit? Nobody's ever disliked reused gloves, so they're there. And so also, Sora isn't too strongly lit from the side, but he's basically lit from his right side, our left side. So you can see here that since I already knew that I was going to flip Jack and position him that way, I'm actually lighting Sora from the opposite side right now, because I know that he's going to get flipped. So again, it's not the strongest lighting. It's not like it's a black room with a window open and all this light's coming in, but it's enough that I felt like I needed to take it into consideration at least. So in the pants, this was just basically straight color pick to try and make sure that I could get the right colors so that it feels like the right material. And I believe the gray that I use as the base is probably a little less saturated than the gray overall on Sora, but you know, trying to get close but not be too crazy about it. The whole thing was colored, as far as I remember, the whole thing was colored with just the fuzzy airbrush, and then I used techniques that I've shared in the past with a fuzzy fuzzy airbrush eraser, to then like shrink it down and get like a sharper cut when I need to. Because if you look at the Sora piece, there are times where the shadow is very soft and times where it's very hard, which is, you know, pretty standard practice. But as I'm trying to sort of figure out how I'm going to mimic this whole thing, I'm sort of playing it by ear as I go. Something also that's, so yeah, this shoulder I color picked everything except then the highlight on it was a white layer set to add, because I could see that that's kind of what was happening on the one on the left. Something else that's sort of interesting to note is that if you look at the way the white is handled, the white trim on Sora's coat, there's like this dark color that it goes to, but then there's also like this random blue that's sort of making its way in there, and I sort of threw that in a little couple spots on mine as well. So now I'm color picking from the Keyblade, which my current crop, just so that you can see it better, doesn't show the Keyblade, but you know, you can figure it out. So I'm color picking the way that they're treating their metal and the way that they're treating their gold, their yellow, I guess, because it's not really gold. I mean, it's truly a yellow in the games. And so now here we're starting to get like the basic gist of them. So now the shoes are the most complicated thing because there's just so much that goes on in like one shoe in terms of color. So I saved them for the end. So here you can see now I'm turning off a bunch of layers in the main body because I'm going in and flattening the shoes in the way that I think might make sense. And then I'm turning on my layers and color picking them as I go so that I can make sure that I'm bringing the right colors to that. So the shoes were almost treated as like their own entire thing. Obviously I'm trying to balance it a little bit. I don't want it to be too heavily weighted in one color. See, we've got these giant patches of yellow, so I needed to make sure that there wasn't too much yellow in the rest of them. Now the last thing that's going to be coming up, I want to make sure I talk through it, is we are going to try and bring in the other characters, which is all art I found from the internet. So full disclosure, I did not draw Sora, Goofy, or Donald in this. Instead what I did was I worked pretty hard to try and make sure that they all look like they came from the same place. So you can see that some of them got color halftone applied to them, and then they get knocked back, and then I threw a noise on everything. So right there you can see the way it looks. On the left is Sora, the way that I found his art, and then on the right is Jack, which was more or less a perfectly clean image that I then added some things to try and treat it. So there is the final piece. I added the Kingdom Hearts 3 logo in there. There's Jack all by himself. He was very happy to see this. So thanks for watching. I hope this one was interesting, albeit a little bit different, and see you soon. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.